In Jesus' day, some of those who taught the law were Pharisees. If they were listening to the Sermon on the Mount, they heard a message that cut straight to the heart. On the other hand, if they would change, Jesus promised a significant future. He said, "Whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven." Then, in a direct reference to the hypocrisy of the religious leadership of the day, Jesus said, "For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven." These religious leaders were not living up to the spiritual implications of the law. They were keeping the letter, but not the spirit. From there, Jesus went on to explain that murder begins in the heart, that adultery begins in the same place. In all of these cases, he was expanding on the law and showing its deeper spiritual implications. Not only is the act of murder wrong, the attitude of anger and scorn behind it is wrong. In such a frame of mind, a person cannot have a right relationship with God. First, we must reconcile with our neighbor. Only then will God hear us. Jesus was stressing that what goes on inside our heads is equally as important as the act of sin, because thought precedes action. It's at the level of conscious thought that sin begins. It ends in wrongful action. The undiluted strength of the young rabbi's teaching wasn't easy to take. His habit of getting to the heart of things was at once refreshing and challenging. He was obviously cut from different cloth than the traditional teachers. Throughout his ministry, he was consistently opposed by many in the religious leadership. The number of misconceptions we've discovered in this journey through the Gospels is a surprise to many people. But there's an even greater shock in store when we consider the events of the last week of Jesus' life, especially those surrounding his death and resurrection. When the women who had seen Jesus' crucifixion and burial came to the tomb on Sunday morning, they found nothing. This is a tomb of the kind that was extant in the first century in Jerusalem. You'll notice that the great round stone is rolled back from the entrance just as it was on that Sunday morning. Where the misconception arises is in believing that Jesus was resurrected on Sunday morning. The only sign or proof that Jesus said he would give of his messiahship was the sign of the prophet Jonah. What was that sign? Jonah had spent 3 days and 3 nights inside a great fish. Jesus said that he would be 3 days and 3 nights buried in the heart of the earth. The problem is that 3 days and 3 nights cannot be fitted into the traditional Friday to Sunday Easter calendar. Yet Jesus said that the only sign of his messiahship would be his burial for 3 days and 3 nights. Part of the difficulty lies in how we measure a day. In biblical times, a day was reckoned from sunset to sunset. Today, we think of a day from midnight to midnight. The truth of the matter is that Jesus participated in the Last Supper on a Tuesday evening. He was tried during the first part of Wednesday and crucified later in the day, dying late in the afternoon. If he was the Messiah, he would have to be alive again 72 hours later. That is, by early evening on Saturday. That's 3 days and 3 nights. The evidence is found by combining the gospel accounts. So obviously then, when the women came on Sunday morning, Jesus was already gone. And here again, at the heart of traditional Christianity, is a huge misconception. Good Friday was not the day of Christ's crucifixion, and Easter Sunday was not the day of his resurrection. If the experts can get it so wrong in matters of simple counting, what might they have got wrong in the more important aspects of faith and belief? So maybe Kierkegaard was not so wrong after all when he said that the Christianity of the New Testament simply does not exist. The English writer G.K. Chesterton expressed it a little differently when he said, "The Christian ideal, it is said, has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and left untried." It's in the practice of Christianity that the real discussion has to take place. Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground today, and much of what we've said has been controversial, and it may have caused you to have some questions. It comes as a shock, after all, to discover that Christmas has nothing to do with the authentic birth of Christ. Men like Kierkegaard, Ellul, and Chesterton are some of the few who have faced up to the contradictions between what the Bible says and the practice of modern Christianity. One man once said that people stumble over the truth, pick themselves up, and go on as if nothing had happened. Hopefully, we can be a little more honest about these things than that. Thanks for joining me today for this special presentation on the first Christians. I'm David Hulme.